I, Uhuru Kenyatta,
in Swahili, the name Uhuru means freedom, a name infused with promise, born in a time of liberation to a family destined to shape a nation. This is the story of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, the son of Kenya's founding father, Jomo Kenyatta, a man whose life will mirror the promise, the contradictions, and the struggles of a nation seeking its own identity in the post-colonial world. Born on October 26, 1961, in Nairobi, Uhuru Kenyatta entered the world as part of a powerful legacy. His father, Jomo Kenyatta, would become the first president of an independent Kenya in 1963, while his mother, Mama Ngina Kenyatta, served as First Lady with a quiet but influential presence. As the heir to Kenya's most prominent political dynasty, Uhuru was born into privilege yet also into a life of expectations, both from his family and the nation. Uhuru received his early education at Nairobi's prestigious St. Mary's School, where he completed both his O and A levels education in 1978. While not considered overly academic, he stood out in subjects like history and geography, areas that would later shape his worldview. In the early 1980s, he enrolled at Amherst College in Massachusetts, where he studied political science and economics. At Amherst College, a renowned liberal arts institution, Uhuru gained deeper insights into global politics and economics, laying the intellectual foundation for his future leadership. In 1989, Uhuru married Margaret Wanjiru Gakuo, a woman known for her dignity, compassion, and quiet strength. Their union symbolized a new chapter in the Kenyatta legacy. The couple has 3 children. Jomo Kenyatta Jr., born in April 1989, carries not only his grandfather's name but the torch of the dynasty. Their second son, Jaba Kenyatta, also known as Muhoho, prefers a life away from public scrutiny. Their daughter, Ngina Kenyatta, named after her grandmother, embodies the generational connection between the family's past and future. Together, the Kenyattas maintain a balance between tradition and modern identity, navigating the challenges of legacy in an evolving Kenya. Upon returning to Kenya in 1989, Uhuru immersed himself in the family's businesses empire, managing interests in agriculture, real estate, and hospitality. But the early 1990s, Kenya's second president, Daniel Arap Moi, saw political potential in him. A young man of distinguished lineage and charisma, Moi began grooming Uhuru as his political heir, a move that would shape Kenya's political future.
Kwa sababu dunia hii imeenda ukabila, vyama vyote vya kikabila, na nikaona kwamba yule ambaye anaweza kuendesha kupeleka wananchi kama vile mimi ningependelea wananchi kuongozwa ni Uhuru Kenyatta. Huyo kijana huyo. Na mimi na washukuru wala ambao wangetaka kufuata ile yangu. Kama watu usikitu, weka mikono juu nione.
Uhuru entered politics formally in 1997, contesting the Gatundu South parliamentary seat.
I would possibly agree that it is not my initiative, because I've been a team player and I've always been ready to work with anybody who has the interests both of our party and of the country at heart. And from that perspective, I think I was prepared to play, as I've said many, many times in the past, any role that I would be offered, either by my party or by Kenyans.
The very seat once held by his father, he lost. Critics dismissed him as inexperienced and out of touch, but Moi remained determined. In 1999, Uhuru was appointed chairman of the Kenya Tourist Board, and by 2001, he became Minister of Tourism and Wildlife. Then, in a controversial move in 2002, Moi endorsed Uhuru as his successor in the presidential race, a decision that divided the ruling part and shocked the nation. Uhuru was defeated by Mwai Kibaki but emerged as a key opposition figure, cementing his place in national politics. The 2007 general election marked one of the darkest moments in Kenya's history. The dispute result triggered as a wave of ethnic and political violence that left over 1,000 people dead and displaced hundreds of thousands. Uhuru, then a close ally of President Kibaki, was implicated in the violence. In 2010, the International Criminal Court charged him with crimes against humanity, alleging his involvement in funding retaliatory attacks.
The prosecutor has consequently applied to have the trial date moved further to enable her acquire more evidence if the case has to proceed. The move by Bensouda follows the withdrawal of 2 more prosecution witnesses, dealing her a major blow in her attempt to prosecute D. Kenyatta. The prosecutor made the application today seeking to have more time to find witnesses that could help her build up the case. The trial date was scheduled for February, and this therefore means, if granted, the trial may delay further. According to Bensouda, her decision to file the application was guided by an evaluation of the evidence she has on her hands and other extraneous considerations. Bensouda said one of her key witnesses in the case against Kenyatta had indicated she was no longer keen to testify. According to the statement, and I quote, "On December 4, 2013, a key second witness in the case confessed to giving false evidence regarding a critical event in the prosecution's case." End of quote. The witness said she had been withdrawn from the prosecution witness list. Bensouda went ahead to say that she needs more time to complete efforts to obtain additional evidence and to consider whether the evidence will enable her office to fully satisfy the evidence required to sustain the trial.
Rather than retreat, Uhuru confronted the charges head-on. Many Kenyans viewed the indictment as a political witch hunter, a rallying cry for nationalism. Alongside William Ruto, also indicted by the ICC, he formed the Jubilee Alliance. Their shared adversity fueled political momentum. In 2013, despite the looming court case, Uhuru Kenyatta was elected President of the Republic of Kenya.
For their fair coverage.
The Kenyan nation waited for history to be rewritten, for the 4th president of this republic to be named the winner of the most grueling of elections in recent history. That grand announcement was scheduled for Saturday 11 a.m. at the Bomas of Kenya auditorium. But it was only way past 1 p.m. that the event took off, as winners of recent parliamentary, gubernatorial and senatorial races, diplomats, observers, the media and other invited guests watched as the IEBC chairman, who is also the returning officer in the presidential election, announced the final figures that catapulted Uhuru Kenyatta to the presidency.
Raila Odinga, 5,340,546. Uhuru Kenyatta, 6,173,433.
Uhuru's first term as president focused on modernizing Kenya through ambitious infrastructural projects. His administration prioritized roads construction, expansion of digital services, and the flagship standard gauge railway known as SGR, linking Nairobi to Mombasa, a massive project financed through Chinese loans. These developments transformed Kenya's landscape and connectivity. However, his tenure was soon marred by corruption scandals, the Eurobond controversy, and the National Youth Service known as NYS scandal raised serious questions about transparency and accountability. Billions went unaccounted for.
In June 2014, the government was all set to go into the international capital markets on a fund-raising mission through the issuance of a sovereign bond. The bond cumulatively raised about 250 billion shillings, whose spending priorities were crystal clear at the time.
Proceeds of both transactions will be used for funding of infrastructure projects in energy, transport, and agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Kenyans, I want to assure you that the government will spend this money prudently.
The government was also upbeat that its decision to look for funding outside the country will trigger lower interest rates locally.
By accessing these external funds, we will reduce government borrowing from the domestic markets, thereby helping drive down interest rates, which should boost investment, spur economic growth, and provide more employment opportunities to our people.
But more than a year down the line, quite the opposite has happened. Kenya's economic growth declined to 5.5% by the close of June compared to 6% in 2014. Interest rates have skyrocketed to levels above 25%, while the shilling's exchange rate has fallen past the 100 shillings mark. A situation the National Treasury has largely blamed on factors beyond Kenya's control. Questions also abound as to what projects the Eurobond funded. According to the National Treasury, close to 197 billion shillings worth of Eurobond proceeds was allocated across 14 ministries, departments and agencies. The Department of Infrastructure got the largest share of the funds, followed by the State Department of Planning. Energy and Petroleum, Water and Irrigation, Agriculture and the Ministry of Lands were also among the biggest recipients of Eurobond funds.
So 21 billion has already been allocated to us, and it has been used on very many projects: school electrification, transmission lines, geothermal exploration and drilling, all that.
But even as the debate over the government spending of Eurobond funds rages on, new questions are set to emerge over the government's decision to borrow 61 billion shillings through a syndicated loan. The main question being, is the government taking too much debt?
I would like to urge Kenyans to draw a clear distinction between the positive impact of the NYS program and the deplorable mismanagement of the past orchestrated by individuals who were determined to railroad its success. Please have comfort that all those involved in pilfering resources earmarked for our youth will indeed be held to account.
Yet Uhuru's government earned praise for launching Huduma Center and the e-citizen platform, which significantly improved access to government services. In 2017, Uhuru faced off once again with Raila Odinga in a fiercely contested presidential election. The Supreme Court made a historic decision by nullifying the initial election results, citing irregularities abuses and illegalities. It was a groundbreaking moment for judicial independence in Africa.
That the presidential election held on 8th August 2017 was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the applicable law, rendering the declared results invalid, null, and void. Number 2, a declaration is hereby issued that the third respondent was not validly elected and declared as the president-elect, and that the declaration is invalid, null, and void. Third, an order is hereby issued directing the first respondent to organize and conduct a fresh presidential election in strict conformity with the Constitution and the applicable election laws within 60 days of the determination under Article 143 of the Constitution.
In the repeat election boycotted by the opposition, Uhuru emerged victorious, though legally re-elected.
I therefore wish to declare Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta
Uhuru Kenyatta won re-election by a significant margin, defeating his long-time opponent Raila Odinga. Uhuru made an emotional and conciliatory speech to a nation divided by one of the most hotly contested elections in history.
His legitimacy was questioned by many, creating deep political divisions in the country. In a stunning political move on March 19, 2018, Uhuru and Raila Odinga publicly shook hands, signaling an unexpected truce after years of rivalry. The handshake became a symbol of national reconciliation and ushered in a new phase of political cooperation. However, it also sparked fractures within the ruling Jubilee Party, particularly between Uhuru and his Deputy President William Ruto. Uhuru turned his attention to constitutional reform through the Building Bridges initiative known as BBI, which aimed to restructure Kenya's political architecture. The BBI, however, faced strong legal challenges and was ultimately declared unconstitutional, a significant blow to Uhuru's second-term legacy.
Having considered the 7 issues framed by this court for determination, the final orders are as follows. 1. The basic structure doctrine is not applicable in Kenya. Ibrahim, Supreme Court Judge dissenting. B. In order to amend the Constitution of Kenya 2010, the 4 sequential steps as pronounced by the 2 superior courts below are not necessary. Ibrahim, Supreme Court Judge dissenting. On the second issue, the first part A, the President cannot initiate constitutional amendments or changes through the popular initiative under Article 257 of the Constitution. Njoki Ndong'o, Supreme Court Judge dissenting. The B aspect of that, issue 2, the President initiated the amendment process in issue. Njoki Ndong'o and the Naura Supreme Court judges dissenting. Consequently, under Article 257 of the Constitution Amendment Bill of 2020 is unconstitutional. Njoki Ndong'o and the Naura Supreme Court judges dissenting. The third issue, the second schedule of the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020 is unconstitutional for being in breach of Article 10(2) and 87(7)(a) of the Constitution of Kenya 2020 for lack of public participation. Joaquin Dongo, Supreme Court Judge, concurring. 4. Civil proceedings cannot be instituted in any court against the President or the person performing the functions of the office of the President during their tenure of office in respect of anything done or not done under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. That was unanimous. 5A, there was no obligation under Article 10 and 257(4) of the Constitution on IEBC to ensure that the promoters of the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020 complied with the requirements for public participation. Unanimous. B, there was public participation with respect to the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020. Mwiru, Vice President, Ibrahim and Wanjara, Supreme Court judges, dissenting. Five, IBC had the requisite composition and quorum to undertake the verification process under Article 257(4). Ibrahim, Supreme Court judge, dissenting. 7. The question raised regarding the interpretation of Article 257(10) of the Constitution on whether or not it requires that all specific proposed amendments to the Constitution should be submitted as separate and distinct referendum questions was not ripe for determination. Joaquin Dongo, Supreme Court judge, concurring. Each party shall bear their own cost, this being a public interest matter. Consequently, the consolidated appeal is determined as follows. The appeal is allowed on issue number 1. The appeal is allowed on issue number 4. The appeal is allowed on issue number 5. The appeal is allowed on issue number 6. The appeal is allowed on issue number 7. The appeal is disallowed on issue number 2. The appeal is disallowed on issue number 3. Those are the orders of the court.
Under Uhuru's leadership, Kenya witnessed substantial infrastructural development from highways to sports and power stations. However, this growth came with a mounting debt burden. By 2022, public debt had surpassed cash 10 trillion. Critics pointed to overborrowing and poor fiscal discipline, warning that Kenya's economic growth was unsustainable. Everyday Kenyans began to feel the pinch. The cost of living soared, taxes increased, and unemployment remained high. An economist in the documentary puts it bluntly, what we saw was growth without sustainability. The debt burden will haunt Kenya for years. Throughout his presidency, Uhuru Kenyatta faced persistent scrutiny over his family's vast business interests. From dairy Brookside to banking NCBA, media and real estates, the Kenyatta empire spans nearly every major sector of Kenya's economy. Critics argued that certain policies disproportionately benefited family businesses. For example, government crackdowns on informal milk vendors were perceived as bolstering Brookside market dominance. Banking regulation was seen to favor NCBA, while not illegal. These overlaps created a perception of favoritism, and double standards fuel public resentment. As his presidency drew to a close, Uhuru made a surprising political pivot. Instead of supporting his deputy William Ruto, he backed long-time rival Raila Odinga in the 2022 election. The move stunned observers and alienated many within his own party. In the end, William Ruto triumphed, defeating Raila and effectively ending the Kenyatta dynasty grip on power. It was a remarkable political twist, their pretense of shining the mentor in a dramatic election showdown. After leaving office in September 2022, Uhuru Kenyatta stepped away from domestic politics, taking up the role of Special Peace Envoy for the Horn of Africa. In this capacity, he contributed to regional peace talks in Ethiopia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, his post-presidency was not entirely serene. In 2023, the Ruto administration launched investigation into the Kenyatta's family's tax affairs. Allegations surfaced that Uhuru was funding anti-government protests, claims he vehemently denied. Despite these challenges, Uhuru remained largely silent, choosing diplomacy over political confrontation. Beyond politics, Kenyatta has remained a family man. His wife Margaret Kenyatta served as First Lady with grace and discretion, leading the Beyond Zero campaign, which aimed to reduce maternal and child mortality. Her quiet activism and widespread respect. Their children have largely stayed away from politics. Jomo and Jaba have focused on businesses, while Ngina Kenyatta has been involved in philanthropic and hospitality ventures. Despite being born into one of Africa's most powerful families, they have chosen a more private path. Uhuru Kenyatta's life is a tapestry of legacy, power, controversy, and evolution. Born into a family that symbolized Kenya's independence, he inherited both the privilege and pressure of leadership. His journey from reluctant politician to president, from ISIS suspect to peacemaker, mirrors Kenya's own complex path through the post-colonial era. In the end, Uhuru Kenyatta remains a symbol not just of freedom, as his name applies, but of the enduring tensions between tradition and change, power and responsibility, promise and reality. The symbol of freedom, not just a name, but a legacy still unfolding.